My name's Eric, and I've been married to Samantha for 17 years. We have 2 kids, a son named Daniel and a daughter named Laura. Lately, Samantha's been coming home late from work more often, and tonight was no exception. It was nearly 10 p.m. by the time she walked in. The kids and I had already finished dinner and wrapped up their homework, and they'd been in bed for about an hour. They didn't even ask about their mom or why she wasn't home, which was a new and unsettling change. It hurt to see that I'd spent the last hour going over our finances. Over the past 2 years, our financial situation had taken a nosedive. Our income had dropped significantly, yet Samantha seemed completely unaware, still spending like we had nothing to worry about. It was as if she thought our finances were in perfect shape. I just finished paying the latest bills, and I figured we might be able to scrape by for a few more months. I couldn't help but wonder if I'd made a mistake somewhere along the way. For the past couple of years, I'd been staring down a looming problem, always wondering when it would finally catch up to us. I'd assumed it would hit us eventually, but now, doubts were starting to creep in that I'm not sure how long she had been standing there, watching me. Lately, I'd been so caught up in my own thoughts that I often lost track of time. Finally, with her arms crossed and that all-too-familiar look of disapproval on her face, she spoke up. "Eric, I want a divorce." I'm not entirely sure what I felt in that moment. My spirit was so weighed down with self-doubt and self-loathing that it almost numbed me to anything new. It wasn't a funny situation by any means, yet I found myself struggling to suppress a laugh. My wife, the woman I'd spent 17 years with, had just announced that our marriage was over, and everything we had built together was unraveling. Strangely enough, it brought a sense of relief. I glanced at her briefly, allowing myself one last trip down memory lane to revisit the good times. But reality quickly snapped me back that I'd always been better at programming than managing, but in the corporate world, programmers often get pushed up the ladder to become project leaders, department heads, and eventually senior management. That's how I ended up as the senior manager of product development, a title that sounded impressive but was really just a glorified sales job. The truth was, at that time, I was the most qualified person for the role. I had practically created our flagship product line on my own, nurtured it through its early stages, and overseen 6 upgrades. I knew the product inside and out. When customers had questions, I had answers. When our team hit roadblocks, I knew how to fix them. With a fresh haircut and an expensive suit, I certainly looked the part. But deep down, I knew I was more of a programmer than a manager. Unfortunately, the career path for someone like me usually leads to becoming a project leader, then a department head, and finally, into senior management. That's how I ended up with the title of Senior Manager of Product Development. It sounded prestigious, but in reality, it was just a fancy name for a sales role. The truth was, I was the most qualified person for the job back then. I had practically created our flagship product line by myself, nurturing it from the ground up and guiding it through 6 major upgrades. I knew every detail about our product inside and out. If customers had questions, I had the answers. If the staff ran into problems, I knew how to fix them. A fresh haircut and an expensive suit completed the image I projected. So, it wasn't exactly a shock when I was eventually let go from Chicago Technology Solutions. If I had been my own boss, I probably would have made the same call. My attendance at meetings had been spotty, to say the least, and we missed more deadlines than I'd like to admit. I wasn't actively trying to get fired, but I wasn't exactly fighting to keep my job at CTS either. I'd been in a prolonged slump, and it took nearly 3 months for me to claw my way out of the initial depression and try to move forward. Unfortunately, that attempt was a complete failure. It took another month before I finally found a solution to my situation, or at least something I could live with. Honestly, if it weren't for the kids, I might have lost my mind. Their well-established routine became my anchor, pulling me back toward some semblance of positivity. The cycle of breakfast, school, snacks, homework, dinner, and bedtime became my guiding principle, slowly leading me back to a more stable life that I fully embraced the role of a stay-at-home dad, taking on household chores and shuttling the kids to and from their activities. The kids genuinely appreciated having me around more, and it made me realize that I still had some value, that I wasn't completely useless. If Samantha noticed the change in our family dynamic, she never said anything about it. Honestly, I doubt she even recognized it that I first met Samantha Clark at a fraternity mixer that I almost skipped. I'd joined the fraternity mainly for the networking opportunities it would offer after graduation, not for the college parties. I figured I'd need every advantage I could get in the job market. Academically, I was solid, but in every other aspect, I was just average: average height, average weight, average looks, average personality. Samantha, on the other hand, had that kind of average that looked much better on a woman. She was a bit reserved, more of a wallflower, and I watched her for a while before finally working up the nerve to talk to her. Our first conversation was brief and quiet, but we introduced ourselves. Over the next few weeks, we started meeting for coffee and studying together at the library. We talked for nearly 2 months before we went on our first official date. From that point on, my life entered an incredible period of happiness. We enjoyed 15 years of pure bliss. Our courtship was short, and our engagement was even shorter. Right after graduation, we got married and moved into our first apartment in Chicago. We'd commute together, taking the morning and evening trains to and from our first jobs. Money was tight, but we tackled it together as a united front. We shared almost everything: our family backgrounds, dating histories, interests, and even our dreams for the future. Where we didn't align, we balanced each other out. If there was something I struggled with, Samantha was great at it, and the same went the other way around. I handled our finances more efficiently, while Samantha was a whiz at managing our social calendar and family events. We worked seamlessly together, and over the next few years, our lives took a turn for the better. Both of us received multiple promotions, our circle of friends grew, and we managed to save enough to buy our first home, all while still enjoying travel and entertainment. Our intimate life mirrored the progress of our relationship, growing slowly but steadily. From holding hands and sharing kisses on our first date, we gradually moved to more intimate moments as we became explosive. 8 years into our marriage, Samantha left her job after our son Daniel was born, followed by our daughter Laura just over a year later. We bought a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, spacious enough for a dog. Along with the house, we got a family sedan and a minivan. On the surface, our lives seemed to be falling perfectly into place: 2 kids, a pet, a house, and 2 cars. It was the epitome of an ordinary, happy life, and I didn't think I could be any more content, but I was wrong. My promotion to manager came shortly after Laura's first birthday. It felt like recognition for all those years of blending into the background without a fuss. As I mentioned, my new salary was pretty substantial, and we didn't take it for granted. I had flexible hours, mostly working from home, with the occasional trip to the office for staff and management meetings. They say money can't buy happiness, and I believe that's true. But what it can buy are stylish clothes, personal grooming, better healthcare, a newer home in a nicer neighborhood, and a boost in confidence. I went from being average to slightly above average. My wife, who I already thought was beautiful, transformed from being average to slightly above average, which I now found incredibly attractive. Our already good sex life reached new heights. We traveled in greater comfort, spent quality time with our kids, and saved more for retirement. When Laura started elementary school, Samantha told me she wanted to return to work part-time. She quickly found a job at a startup marketing firm that seemed to suit her well. Her work schedule aligned perfectly with dropping off and picking up the kids from school, which was a great bonus. We didn't rely on her income, so we set it aside for savings. Based on my calculations, we were on track to retire comfortably by the time our kids finished college. Then came the update that would shatter it all. 3 months before our 15th wedding anniversary, I stumbled upon the fact that my wife was having an affair, purely by accident on my birthday. In reality, I had found the evidence 2 days before my birthday, but it took me a few weeks to piece it all together. At first, I didn't think much of Samantha taking a more active role in her new job. It meant she'd be working a few extra hours a week, and I didn't mind picking up the kids from school. That it didn't really throw my routine off balance. But about 3 months into her new job, I began to notice that she seemed distracted quite often, so I asked her about it. She told me she was still adjusting to the demands of the role and that it was stressing her out a bit. Wanting to lighten her load, I took on more responsibilities around the house. When our once passionate sex life noticeably started to wane, I brought it up. She shrugged it off, saying that she was getting older and didn't feel the need for intimacy as much as before. It caught me off guard when she casually dropped the F word, but, surprisingly, things did improve for a short while. Our physical connection picked up for a few weeks, only to fizzle out again. I hesitated to bring it up a second time, worried it might spark an argument. That I was nearly at my wit's end when I stumbled upon something unexpected. The weather had cooled down, and I was searching for one of my sweaters. Since I had taken over doing the laundry, I sometimes mixed up where the clothes should go. While sifting through the sweaters on her closet shelf, I noticed something hidden behind a few old shoeboxes. It was impossible to miss, a bright pink box tied with a white ribbon from that lingerie store. The card attached to it was addressed to Lover, and it immediately piqued my curiosity. I wrestled with myself for a moment. Should I peek or wait? In the end, I decided to open it. I wasn't sure I could wait until my birthday to enjoy whatever surprise my wife had in store for me. The message inside the card was clear: please disregard the packaging of this gift. You can unwrap your actual present on your birthday when I'm wearing what's inside the box. Then you can have my last virginity. Love always, Samantha. For the next 48 hours, I went out of my way to show her affection. I greeted her with flowers at the door, gave her a foot massage, and cooked her favorite meal. But her reaction wasn't what I had hoped for. It felt like she was just enduring my gestures, not appreciating them. On my birthday, I made sure the kids finished their homework early to avoid any interruptions to my long-awaited gift. I was caught off guard when Samantha came home late from work, and her casual question about dinner left me even more puzzled. Still, I played along, eagerly anticipating the surprise she had hinted at. I suggested we go out for pizza, which thrilled the kids, so we headed out. At the restaurant, Eric, in cahoots with our waitress, had the staff sing a spirited rendition of Happy Birthday to me. I thought I saw a flash of surprise in Samantha's eyes, but she quickly masked it with a smile. I'll give you your present later, Eric, she said, still smiling. The drive home was thick with tension, and I nearly had a close call on the road. The 15 minutes spent waiting for the kids to get ready for bed were agonizing, and the next 15 minutes waiting for them to actually fall asleep felt unbearable. Thankfully, Samantha returned from a last-minute trip to the store for milk just after the kids had drifted off. When I reached the bedroom, she wasn't there. I sat on the bed, growing more and more frustrated with the waiting. When was I finally going to get my gift? Then she emerged from the bathroom, not in the seductive lingerie I had imagined, but in a full-length flannel nightgown, her face scrubbed clean of makeup and her hair pulled back in a ponytail. At that point, my frustration was teetering on the edge of anger. When was I finally going to get my present? She climbed into bed, pulled the covers up, and reached for her bedside lamp, but then she paused. "Oops, I almost forgot," she said, opening a drawer on her nightstand. She pulled out a small, square box wrapped in the multicolored balloon paper we had used for Eric's last birthday. Handing it to me, she said, "Happy birthday, dear," before rolling over, turning off her lamp, and going straight to sleep. I was too stunned to even open the gift. The next day, depression hit me like a ton of bricks. I kept replaying the events of the previous evening in my mind, desperately trying to figure out what I had done to ruin what should have been a special night. I felt completely lost, sinking deeper into despair over the next 2 weeks. That unopened present seemed to mock me, a constant reminder of how badly things had gone wrong. I've heard all the cliches about the husband being the last to know, but I honestly had no clue. The thought of Samantha cheating on me was so far-fetched that it never even crossed my mind. But it was the first thing that popped into my head 13 days after my birthday when she called home, saying, "It's Steve's 30th birthday, and the staff is taking him out to celebrate. I might be home pretty late." I don't remember how I responded or even how I ended up in the bedroom closet, but I do remember staring at the empty space where my present had been. The next thing I knew, I was hit with an excruciating pain in my chest, and I rushed to the bathroom, where I threw up. For longer than I'd like to admit, I genuinely thought I might be having a heart attack, and for a fleeting moment, I wished it were true. Anything to escape the pain. Steve Matthews, Samantha's boss, was a slick, somewhat sleazy advertising executive a few years younger than both Samantha and me. I had only met him once, but I distinctly remembered not liking him. He came across as insincere, the kind of guy who spoke with a fake charm that made your skin crawl. It was Laura who snapped me out of my spiral. "Are you okay, Daddy?" she asked, her voice quivering as she stood over me, tears brimming in her eyes. It took me a moment to focus on her. "I'm okay, sweetheart," I managed to say. "Daddy just ate something that didn't agree with him. I'll be out in just a minute, okay? I need to clean up." Eventually, I made it out of the bathroom, though I don't remember much else. I do recall grabbing my dusty bottle of scotch. Judging by the pounding headache I woke up with the next morning, I must have downed several glasses. I had no idea when Samantha had come home, but when I found her in the kitchen the next morning, feeding the kids, she acted like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. She was just going through her routine, but then I noticed something, a slight wince when she sat down to eat. It was subtle, but it was there, and in that instant, any lingering love I had for her was shattered. I wish I could tell you that I confronted my cheating wife right then and there, but I didn't. I was utterly devastated, and just getting through each day was all I could manage. Things didn't get any better for weeks. I felt like a zombie, watching my wife go about her day as if she didn't have a care in the world, while I felt worse and worse with each passing day. I thought I had hit rock bottom. It wasn't until the weekend of our 15th wedding anniversary that I finally shook myself out of it and decided to take action. To be honest, I had been acting like a coward. I knew it, and there's probably some psychological term for the way I was acting. If my dad were still alive, he'd just call me a fool, and he'd be right. The fog in my mind finally lifted when my wife casually mentioned she had to travel for a work conference during our anniversary. I couldn't put my finger on why it bothered me so much, but it did. It felt like another slap in the face, another level of disrespect. Her complete disregard for the significance of that date cut deep. After drowning my sorrows in alcohol on the night of our anniversary, I woke up seething with anger. I had reached my breaking point. I called my lawyer and scheduled an appointment, ready to end this farce of a marriage. I was convinced that my life couldn't get any worse. I was wrong. The fierce determination I walked into my attorney's office with quickly crumbled into disbelief. I knew divorces could be complicated, but I naively thought my wife's affair would work in my favor. Instead, my lawyer dismantled my case piece by piece. I had no concrete evidence of the affair, and even if I did, it wouldn't change much. Our assets would likely be split 50-50ths. I had no proof that my wife was an unfit mother, so the best I could hope for was shared custody. Given our income disparity, I'd likely end up paying spousal support and child support. She would probably get primary custody and stay in the house, for the children's sake. I felt like a betrayed fool, and it seemed like my wife was going to get away with everything. My depression deepened into complete despair. Even my unfaithful wife noticed after a few weeks and asked, "You look really worn out, Eric. Is something bothering you?" I forced a smile and replied, "No, dear." At least she made an effort to pretend she cared while I just drifted through life. Then I lost my job. At the time, it felt like the final blow, but strangely, it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. My glimmer of hope came from the most unexpected source, the evening news. I was watching a series of depressing stories that seemed to mirror my own misery. But one story grabbed my attention. A major East Coast employer had gone bankrupt. Former employees were struggling to get their final paychecks and were worried about their pensions. For once, I felt like some people might actually be in a worse situation than I was. Then the news analyst gave his take. The employees might win a judgment against their former employer, but it wouldn't matter because there was no money left. That's when the idea hit me. If there was nothing left, my wife couldn't take anything from me. If we had nothing, we'd split nothing. Sure, I'd be sacrificing my share, but since I was already going to lose half, did the rest even matter? My plan started off simple. I was unemployed and had no intention of looking for work. I decided to spend our life savings until there was nothing left. I knew it was a foolish idea, and even I doubted it would work, but it was something to hold on to. 2 years can feel like an eternity. It was mind-numbingly dull for me, especially since I was alone most of the time. It became painfully clear that Samantha had been the glue that held our social circle together. As Samantha distanced herself from me, I realized how few close friendships I had. Being an only child, with both parents gone at a young age, left me truly isolated. I won't drag you through the monotonous details of my life during this period. To put it simply, it was a miserable 2 years. The only bright spot during this time was my children. Before all this, I had never spent money frivolously. I was meticulous about tracking every expense and keeping receipts for every purchase. But that all changed. I started making small weekly cash withdrawals, tucking the money away. After a couple of months, it became clear that I wasn't burning through our savings fast enough to make a significant dent. Turns out, I was too good at saving money and not so great at spending it. So, I decided to step up my game and tweak my plan. I enrolled in an executive MBA program at a local, but outrageously expensive, university. That decision alone set me back nearly $120,000. Then, I paid cash for a brand new luxury SUV, another $60,000 gone in an instant. I also fully funded educational savings accounts for my kids, which drained another $260,000. I splurged on a new wardrobe and began taking increasingly large cash withdrawals twice a week. Interestingly, I rarely used the money for gambling during these outings. I'd spend a few bucks here and there, just enough to make it look like I'd spent the day at the casino. I made sure to keep receipts for meals, snacks, and parking fees to maintain the appearance. Most of the money, however, went into a wall safe I installed in our garage, a personal post-divorce emergency fund, just in case things got ugly. One of my other costly endeavors was hiring full-time private surveillance on Samantha and her lover. I went all out, requesting a comprehensive package that included video footage, photos, and a daily diary of their activities. I'm a bit embarrassed to admit how much that set me back, but you can imagine it wasn't cheap. You might wondered if Samantha noticed my newfound spending habits. I'd say she did, except for the gambling part. I had to inform her about the money transfers to the kids because I needed her signature for the custodial accounts. She also saw the new car and my upgraded wardrobe, yet strangely, she never brought them up. I'm pretty sure she assumed I was still working and that we were living a comfortable life. She made a few purchases herself, which I didn't question. I often wondered who was enjoying the benefits of her more frequent lingerie purchases, but that was a topic we never discussed. We maintained a cordial but distant relationship, interacting daily as if we were just tolerating roommates who didn't particularly like each other. As for our bed life, well, that was a non-existent subject. Spending time with my children became the best part of my life. I made sure to support their interests, whether it was working on homework together or playing games. We enjoyed outings to parks, went on bike rides, and watched movies. Since I had taken on the role of the house chef, my kids showed interest in helping out with cooking. I found some simple recipes for us to try, and they eagerly joined in. Samantha was usually around during the week, but I neither excluded her from our family time nor actively included her. If Samantha decided to join in on family activities, she did so with minimal effort. I continued receiving weekly reports on her activities, and at first, I thought she was seeing her boss. But it turned out she was juggling a few guys from her office, and soon, even some of the company's clients were making their way into her social calendar. Did it sting? Not really. My opinion of her was already so low that having proof didn't add much to my misery. The reports were dull and the videos poorly shot, nothing that stirred any real emotion. I was surprised to learn that Steve Matthews wasn't particularly skilled in the bedroom. I had assumed that, given the gift she bought, their relationship was something serious, but it seemed more like a series of casual flings. He was average at best, and she just went along with it. The same was true for the other 6 men she was involved with. There was, however, one client who stood out, a rather nerdy-looking guy with glasses and a pocket protector, epitomizing geekiness. He seemed especially enthusiastic with Samantha. The footage was too grainy to clearly see her reactions, but from what I could gather, it looked more painful than pleasurable. About a year into this charade, I realized that I hadn't had a single enjoyable moment. It didn't bother me much. It was just another layer of my bleak existence. After a year, I decided to end the surveillance. I had seen enough, and watching the footage had become more of a tedious task than anything else. With all the spare time on my hands, I turned my focus to life after my marriage, which I assumed was inevitable. I started a new exercise routine. I'd always been in decent shape, but over time, my strength and stamina improved. While I'd never be a bodybuilder, I was content with my progress. That I also began researching trends in my former industry, preparing for the eventual need to find a new job. Being away for a year had put me at a disadvantage, so I dedicated time each day to catching up on the latest technologies and industry developments. I paid particular attention to my old company, CTS. They seemed to be stagnating, not losing ground but not advancing either. In the tech world, stagnation is equivalent to falling behind. Alongside this, I delve into understanding divorce dynamics, especially how it impacts children. My kids had been crucial in helping me deal with my own pain, and I wanted to ensure I was fully prepared for their adjustment when the time came. There's a lot of information out there, though much of it was less helpful than I hoped. Around 8 months into my new routine, I began feeling increasingly anxious. Samantha started coming home at more regular times and engaging in conversations about my day. Her attempts to reconnect seemed forced, and she began dressing more provocatively for bedtime, as if trying to rekindle our lost intimacy. Things deteriorated further after a few weeks. For a year and a half, Samantha had been emotionally detached, merely going through the motions of our marriage. Then, out of nowhere, she started lamenting our lack of communication and talking about working on our relationship. My response was to remain completely silent. Her attempts to reconcile continued, leading up to her birthday. I left her gift on the dining room table, wrapped in the same colorful paper she had used for my last present. It was a cheap digital watch, a stark contrast to the expensive gift she had once given me. After stumbling upon a similar watch at a convenience store for $9.95, I was initially irritated. However, when I noticed they also had a matching women's model, my annoyance turned to amusement. I bought it and waited 18 months to give it to her. I almost wish I could have seen her reaction, but unfortunately, I wasn't around when she opened it. The kids and I had an impromptu movie night that lasted late into the night, and by the time we woke up the next morning, Samantha had already left. Life quickly fell back into my new routine. Samantha started spending more time at the office, and our communication at home dwindled to nothing. Then came the moment I had been anticipating. Eric, I want a divorce. I hoped she would act quickly, but it took almost a week before I was served with her divorce petition, which I found somewhat amusing. Her petition included demands for spousal and child support, an unfair distribution of assets in her favor, and accusations of mental and emotional cruelty. I decided to wait until the following Monday to take the kids camping, not wanting them to be around when tensions escalated. We returned 6 days later, feeling refreshed, only to find Samantha waiting for us at home. She was sitting alone in the living room, looking unwell. I couldn't help but wonder which part of my counteractions had caught her off guard the most. That in response to her petition, I had filed for divorce as well, citing her infidelity and requesting the house, our primary asset, and full custody of the children. I also sought spousal and child support since I had been unemployed and caring for the kids full-time for the past 2 years. Additionally, I had initiated alienation of affection lawsuits against Samantha's 7 lovers. Though I didn't expect to win these suits, I hoped the negative publicity might work in my favor. I also filed civil lawsuits against her employer and the companies of 3 clients who had been involved with her. I didn't expect to come out on top, but I aimed to make things as difficult as possible. To send a clear message, I sent a DVD containing Samantha's compromising moments to her parents and her best friend. Although all the evidence was already included in my counter lawsuit, I wanted to eliminate any chance that the kids would be exposed to her deceit. As the kids grabbed a snack and went to their rooms to get ready for bed, they paid little attention to their mother. Samantha made no effort to connect with them. I went to the fridge for a beer and then settled into the chair across from her in the living room. "Oh, Samantha," I said, "I don't hate you. Hate requires effort, and to be honest, I haven't expended any effort when it comes to you. All my energy was devoted to taking care of myself and my children." "But I'm your wife," she protested. "Stop," I cut her off. "I won't tolerate anyone sullying my wife's good name. She was a loving and caring woman, my closest friend and partner, and the mother of our children. She's gone now, and you've taken her place. But don't pretend that you have any real connection to me." It took her a long time to respond. "What should I do now?" Is that a rhetorical question, or are you genuinely seeking my advice? I didn't wait for her answer. "I suppose there are a few options you could consider. You could leave and try to start over somewhere far away. That's what I'd do. I'll never allow my children to spend significant time with you, so don't let that influence your decision. Alternatively, you could stick around, trying to maintain a low profile, but who knows what gossip will spread or who would want to employ someone like you. You might find someone who's willing to overlook your reputation, but what kind of despicable person would that be? You could also reflect on your actions, though I hope you don't. Seeing you suffer as you deserve is too enjoyable to pass up. I'd been rehearsing that speech for months. I should have felt satisfaction as I watched each word break what was left of her spirit. Instead, I felt only emptiness. Final update: life after the divorce had its ups and downs. I fared better with my lawsuits than I had anticipated, securing just over $1 million in settlements from the 3 companies linked to my ex-wife's affairs. It was unexpected because my lawyer had advised against expecting much. It turned out that these companies didn't want to risk negative publicity after witnessing how aggressively we pursued my ex-wife's former employer. We had systematically dismantled her company through legal maneuvers like discovery motions, depositions, and media leaks. I also discreetly reached out to the CEOs of her remaining clients, detailing her and her boss's indiscretions and suggesting they reconsider their association. Gradually, their revenues declined, employees left, and eventually, the company declared bankruptcy. Steve Matthews was ousted and left town in disgrace. The $200,000 check I received from his dismissal, though smaller compared to my other victories, was particularly satisfying. While I didn't win anything from the alienation of affection lawsuits, something I never truly expected, the 4 wives involved managed to secure substantial settlements and subsequent divorces. Life wasn't all victories and celebrations, though. I faced frequent encounters with people who knew about my situation, and the mockery and teasing were intense for a while. That I wasn't sure if it was fortunate or unfortunate, but I didn't really care about the harsh judgments from others. Already feeling like a failure, their words barely registered. Some of the insults were unexpectedly clever, though that I did my best to shield my children from the negativity, prioritizing their well-being above all else. They were upset for a while, but they bounced back relatively quickly. My greatest victory was landing the role of Vice President of Design and Development at CTS. To distract myself from my personal turmoil, I threw myself into programming. During those challenging 2 years, I developed a software add-on for CTS that allowed seamless integration with other popular programs from competing firms. I eventually founded my own company to market this innovation. Within a year, all 3 rival companies made offers to acquire both my business and the software. I ended up selling for $11 million and received an outstanding compensation package from CTS. For a time, I contemplated retirement, but my near absence of a social life made me fear becoming a recluse. I decided to keep busy by hiring an elderly lady named Mrs. Patricia Adams. She worked part-time as a housekeeper and nanny for my children. Within a year, she moved in full-time, taking residence in the guest suite above the garage of our new home. Her role was almost like that of a grandmother, warm, gentle, but firm when needed. I valued the life guidance she provided. Despite my emotional scars and cynicism, I leaned on her for advice on various decisions. As the years passed, my children grew into well-adjusted adults. I saw them and their families occasionally, though our closeness diminished over time. I held no grudges. It was better to manage my bitterness and keep some distance. Mrs. Adams continued working for me until my children went off to college, then retired. I ensured she had free accommodations and meals for the rest of her life, as part of her pension. Despite her persistent encouragement for me to live fully and find a companion, she passed away knowing I would remain alone. I never truly opened up to anyone again. My friendships were superficial and unfulfilling, and my dating life was nearly non-existent, limited to occasional group outings organized by casual acquaintances. I earned a reputation as a cold, ruthless individual. Most people steered clear of me, and I couldn't blame them. I managed my sexual needs through regular appointments with call girls, made possible by my growing wealth. I compensated them generously for their time and services, keeping our encounters strictly casual before sending them on their way. There was one woman, Candy, who I grew fond of for a time. Her real name was Mary Beth. She was a passionate and willing partner, and it felt like our connection went beyond a mere client-provider relationship. However, I was reluctant to burden her with my emotional baggage. Sensing she was becoming too attached, I decided to end things. As for Samantha, she faced her own set of challenges. For almost a year, she made attempts to reach out to me, though I wasn't sure of her motives. Was she hoping for a reconciliation, or was she trying to establish a connection with my children? It was possible, but I had made my boundaries clear. Samantha tried to stay in Chicago, so I took measures to keep tabs on her. I tracked her job applications, ensuring her complete work history followed her. Whenever she began dating, something that seemed to happen quickly, I sent care packages to her new partners. These packages contained detailed information about her past, hoping to prevent her from evading her history by ignoring it. If I had to confront it daily, so should she. One of her prospective partners, fueled by alcohol, showed up at my doorstep, confronting me about the torment I was causing Samantha. He physically pushed me as I opened the door, causing me to stumble back. It was a grave mistake on his part. Despite having no background in martial arts or special forces, and never having been in a physical altercation before, I was consumed by a profound rage. My anger towards Samantha and her lovers erupted in a violent outburst. The result was a noticeable black eye for him. He was fortunate to have survived. He pleaded guilty to misdemeanor assault and unlawful entry and received probation as a first-time offender. The years of reconstructive surgery and rehabilitation left a lasting impact on him. Samantha never reached out to me again. After a year of monitoring her activities, I stopped. She had found steady employment cleaning rooms at a highway hotel in a remote town in Virginia, about 700 miles away. The only time I saw her again was 16 years later at my daughter's wedding. By then, Samantha had reconnected with my children, but I made no effort to interfere. Time had not been kind to her. She had gained at least 20 pounds, and deep wrinkles and signs of smoking marked her appearance. Overall, she looked aged and worn out. Still, beneath the changes, I recognized the woman I once loved. At the wedding, She sat alone in the back of the church's bride section. Her interaction with my daughter was brief and polite, but she made no attempt to speak with me. Throughout the evening, we remained no closer than 30 feet from each other. When the night ended, she was waiting outside for a cab. When I noticed the small gold band with a tiny diamond on her left ring finger, a smile unexpectedly crossed my face. For the first time in a while, it felt genuine. Perhaps she had fared better than I had, judging by the ring. I slowly walked toward her, my gaze lingering on the ring before meeting her eyes. Her expression was marked by deep sadness. "Just so you know, you were the one who ruined my life first," she said. I glanced from her ring back to her eyes, trying to hold back any emotion. "I'm genuinely glad you found someone. I hope he brings you happiness." Without waiting for a response, I briskly made my way to my car, where my driver was waiting attentively. "Good evening, Mr. Smith. I trust you had a pleasant evening, sir. Shall we head to the club?" "It went as well as I could have expected, Jonathan. Let's go directly back to the house." "I think I'd like to be alone tonight." "Certainly, sir," Jonathan replied. As we pulled away, I did my best not to look back, though I did catch a glimpse of her brief wave. "Thank you," I whispered to myself as we drove away.